Good afternoon, Becky. How are you?
Hello, Chris. I'm fine, thank you. How are you? You've got earphone things in today, haven't you?
I have got earphones in things today because somebody nicely borrowed my speaker, but that way you can both hear you and you can hear me, and otherwise it wouldn't work. But that's absolutely fine, not a problem at all. But I'm not listening to music, don't worry. It's just so that I can hear you even more clearly than ever, so that's good.
Perfect, good.
Last time we were together we did the Easter craft, didn't we? Which was fantastic.
Oh, do you know what? I filled my little box with a bunny at the back. I filled it with little tiny white chocolate eggs, and it just looked so nice. It was really pretty, and it was very Eastery, and it had a little tail on the back. I love that. Yeah,
it was really good.
Nice.
And I guess what you can do is you could have a look, if you still go back and have a look at any of the things that we've done over the last year or so, can't you? You can have a little bit of a look at what we've done.
Yeah, it's all there, isn't it? Because we've done a lot of things. When you look at it, we've done craft, we've cooked, we've made things.
All sorts. And this time we're going to do some growing this time. And I noticed that we've got that lovely hand print, and by the end of it you too will have a hand that can make a print like that by the end of this as we go through. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do some growing. And so we get, and I'm going to try to explain this, so this could be a bit of a challenge as we go through, but I reckon we'll be okay. So
we'll be okay, but we need to bring in our friends, because we've got Poppy and Daisy helping today, haven't we?
Poppy and Daisy are here. Hi, Poppy and Daisy. Hello, and Amy and Margaret are helping as well. Hi there. How was school today, guys?
Good.
Good stuff. Good. Excellent. The thumb up. We like that. We thumb up. So what I'm going to do now then, shall I get started on beginning to explain? I think that'd be a good strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us what we need. I've got a box. This task is to make some seed bombs, and I'll explain how they work a little bit later. But what you're going to need for it is you're going to need some, basically you're going to need some air drying clay, which is available from all sorts of craft shops and available online as well. So you're going to need some air drying clay. You're going to need, I put my compost into a little pot here. You're going to need a small amount of compost here. And also what you're going to need some seeds. And I've got some wildflower mixture seeds with some cornflowers in it as well. But you can use all sorts of seeds as you go through. I've got a big bag here of seeds, this is the one. This is Cornflowers Annuals Wildflower Seed Mix. And so you could pick seeds if you've got seeds from your garden that you've collected the year before. We used some of those a little bit on some of these we've made earlier. So I've got those already, and I've got a knife. It doesn't have to be a particularly sharp knife. It just needs to be a knife that can cut through things. And I've got somewhere to store them afterwards as well. And
can I ask you a question? You know this compost?
Yes.
Could it be just soil out of the garden?
Yeah, it could, Becky. Absolutely. You could just simply go and get some soil, not make it with too many lumps in, but yeah, it could just be soil out of the garden. Really, it's absolutely fine off the top of the garden. Because what's going to happen is we're going to make these into some sort of like receptor containers to put some compost and some seed. And then what happens is there's enough moisture. The moisture's in the clay will allow the seeds to begin to germinate and grow in the compost. And then because it's air dry clay, as it's outside and it dries off, it will fall off, and it means that the seeds will grow in the place where you put them, which is pretty amazing. So that's quite a nice thing to do. So here's what we're going to do. If you get your piece of clay, and I'm going to cut mine into about centimetre cube. So because of the way I've done mine, I'm going to cut mine down the middle in half, lengthways, and then I'm going to do it. I'm going to get 12 out of mine. So I've gone half that way. So then I'm going to go half again. And then I'm going to go into thirds. And I've got, well, by the end of it, I should end up with, and it, by the way, it doesn't matter if they're not exactly the same size, but this is about the size that you want. So I've got here just a cube that's about a centimetre cubed of the clay, but it really doesn't matter if they're a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. If they're really much bigger, if they're double the size, they wouldn't work, and if they're really tiny, they might be a bit of a challenge as well. But so I've got all of those. So I've got 12 out of my piece of clay. Obviously it depends upon what size piece of clay you have, but about a centimetre cube. Have you got your centimetre cubes there, Becky?
I have, and actually I've got 12. One was a bit big and another was a bit small. So like in cooking, I took a bit off the big one and gave it to the small one.
Absolutely.
I've got 12 more or less the same.
That's right. Daisy and Poppy, how are you getting on? You get, yeah, they look the right sizes. Let's have a look. I can see this is very like the cooking, except we won't eat them. We've got to lift. It's the challenge of working. Yeah, they're just about the perfect size. That's brilliant. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the cubes and we're going to roll them. And this is, I quite like this bit. We're going to roll them to make just a little ball, really. And I'm going to do that on about four of them to start with, I think, as a bit of a, to get us going. Do you know what? I'm even going to change that. I'm going to do it on 6. So I get my hands together, I roll them together, make them into a ball, and I put them onto my surface where I'm doing this making. I've got an old board that we've got here. So I'm going to roll them up. And this is just like the clay that if you want it, it's lovely clay. You can make models out of it and do all sorts of things with the clay as you go through. So I've just done it with 6 for the moment for the sake of the time. And when we get on to the others, I'll carry on with those afterwards. So have we got 4 or 6 done? This is just like making peppermint creams, Becky, or something like that, I think.
It certainly is, but my hands have gone ever so pink in the middle.
Yeah, I just saw Daisy and Poppy's hands. We got that print. I think we need to make sure we wash our hands afterwards. But yeah, you've got the pink hands too. Look at that. We've got the very pink hands there. So, having got your spheres ready or balls ready, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to kind of flatten them to make them into a bit of a pancake, really, I suppose. But you want them with the edges slightly up like that. Can you see that? Let's have a look. Can you see? It's almost like a little cup, like a little bowl, like a tiny little bowl for those of you that do pottery. But it's kind of like a tiny little bowl. And I'm going to do that with all of them. You could, if you wanted to, you could put them into the palm of your hand and use that as the way to make them into a bowl. But basically, we're going to make them. I'm going to make the 6 of them. And if you wanted to, you could get a little production line going if you're working with some other people. And some people could do the rolling, some people could do the flattening and the squishing out. And some people could do the next stages that we're going to do. So I'm just going to try to, you can see this is actually not a really long task to be able to do because we're kind of halfway there now when we've done this.
Chris?
Yeah.
Does it matter how thin they are? I mean, if they're too thin, it won't kind of hold everything in, will it?
No, you don't want them too thin, but nor do equally. It's kind of that kind of thickness. Think pastry, Becky, is what I'd say. Think pastry. Do you know what I mean? You're doing pastry, not buns. So you want a thin bit. That's what I would say. So I'm trying to work out how thin they'd be. I reckon they're a couple of millimeters. A couple of millimeters thick, maybe a bit less than that. And if they get a little bit, and they're not totally perfect around the edge, mine aren't. Mine are all a little bit funny around the edges. That's absolutely fine because this is just gonna be the container that we're making now. That we're going to put some of the soil or compost and some of the seeds in. So here's what we do next. If when you've got to that point, you put them in the palm of your hand and you take a tiny pinch, not a lot, of soil and put it in the middle of the pancake type thing. And then I'm going to take a similar amount of seeds and sprinkle them in there. And the thing is, not all of them will germinate. And then what I do is I'm going to fold them up so they look a little bit like a Cornish pasty. Oh, he's tipped them out. Don't worry, I can tip it back in. So I'm going to take them out and I'm going to fold it up to make a little bit like a Cornish pasty. And they like that. And so what I've done is I've enclosed in my clay all of the seeds. And then I just make them into a ball again. And I remake them into a ball. And if some of the seeds and some of the soil comes through onto the edge, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to roll them too hard because if I roll them too hard, I break the clay a little bit. And I don't want to do too much of that. And then you can
my finger through mine.
Yeah, and then you can just push. You can just put the clay back over, can't you? You can use your thumb to work the clay over, and then you end up with something that's a little bit like that. See, I put it in front of my. I don't know where the best place to put it. It's probably there. I'm just going to hold it there. You can just see it there, and inside there's the soil, and there's like that, Becky. And then I'm going to put them to one side to dry, and then I'm going to do the same. How are we getting on, Daisy and Poppy? Are we getting? Looking good. Looking good. Well done, folks. Well done. I'm going to do the next one. So the idea is we go through this process, and you could, like we last year, we collected from our garden in the autumn. We didn't know that we were going to do this, but we collected some poppy seeds. You know, when poppies, they've got those really big, there we go, Poppy and Daisy, it's a good one for you. And yeah, those really big seed heads on some of the poppies, and you can just shake them and put them into your hands, and you can collect the seed from your garden. You can collect the sort of wildflower seeds from your garden.
That's a good idea. I like the sound of that.
Because that's kind of like, yeah, and it's a bit like you said, Becky. It's also, you can do it with just soil from your garden, really. I've gone a slightly different order this time. I've basically put all of the soil on all of them. Now I'm going to put all of the seeds on the ones as I'm going through. And I'm just sprinkling, as you can see here. I'm just pinching. Mine are only in a pot to make it easy for me, so that I don't have to rummage through. And then when they're done that, then I can just pick them up and I can reconstruct them. And it's what's nice about this is I kind of quite like fiddling with clay, really.
It's lovely.
It's lovely. And then you roll them up and you put them there, and they probably, because they're going to need to dry out before you put them out, is what I'd say. They probably need, Becky?
When they're dry, will they have gone a slightly paler colour? Is that how we know that they're dry?
Yes, they'll go slightly paler colour, and they'll be a bit harder on the top, because at the moment when you feel them, they're still a bit squishy, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they go, yeah, absolutely. They'll go a little bit paler. And we generally put, when we've done them before, we put them onto a windowsill. We leave them on the cardboard or the kitchen roll or whatever we've put them on, and we put them on the in the sunlight, and they just sort of change colour. And I reckon within 24 hours they're kind of hardened, and they're just called seed bombs, really. And that when you come to do them, the instructions are, when they've dried, is just to kind of rake over an area of soil, but it doesn't have to be really, it doesn't have to be kind of like perfectly sort of like a flower bed at the side. Rake over an area of soil, and you can just simply throw the bombs in, really. You don't have, and they land, and slowly but surely the clay will, because it's air dry clay, will begin to disintegrate if it's left outside. But inside, the seeds and the seeds will have begun to germinate, and they've got enough goodness in the soil to enable them to germinate. And so there we go. So I've done 6, and I'll do my other 6 a little bit later.
I've done 5 so far, but I've just had an idea.
Yes.
And I wonder, you've made quite a lot of these, Chris. I wonder whether it might be quite nice if you and I throw some at St. Peter and Paul in the churchyard.
That would be
maybe
lovely,
kind of under the hedge. And then when they grow, people will say, oh, look at those lovely flowers. Where did they come from? And we can say it was command. If you were online, you'd have seen it. Shall we do that?
We'll do that. We'll find a nice area. That's a really lovely idea of those. So as we're making them through, and we can just continue. I'll make my others in a little while. But one of the things that is really nice is they're really quite nice gifts to give to people as well. If you want to say to somebody, at the moment you go to visit somebody, we can go to people's gardens now at times, can't we? You could go along, and you could, if you wanted to. We just found these little bags. You can just see those. And what you can do is you can put 3 of these when they're dry. I'll just put them when they're not, these ones aren't fully dry, but you can see that they go really nicely into the bag, and you could put a little instructions on what to do with them, or a little thing in there. And what then somebody can have is they can have a lovely little gift that you could give to somebody to say, here's some brilliant seed bombs. And there's a gift. Yes. Becky.
Strangely enough, I've got some because Fred came and gave me some the other day. So I've got a bag, and they are dry, so they're a bit paler. And he's written instructions to tell me what to do with them.
He has. What was his instructions?
He said, get your flower bombs and throw them into bare soil. Leave them to grow. Plant in the spring or the autumn.
So we're at the point where we're beginning to plant them. How are you getting on, Daisy and Poppy? You there? Good stuff. So what we would love to see is when they're eventually dry, we could post pictures of them when they've all been done, couldn't we? And then what we could do is when we've thrown them somewhere and we see them begin to grow, we could send pictures of them beginning to grow there. But I love that idea about under a hedge somewhere, Becky, as they begin to grow, because they should be a mixture of blues and pinks and whites and all sorts of wildflowers. And the wonderful thing about wildflowers is that they attract all sorts of wildlife. How are we getting on? There
Absolutely.
we go. They're all sorted. So Daisy and Poppy, thank you ever so much, and we can continue to be carrying on making these. I'll continue making mine as we go along. But Becky, let's have a look at yours, Becky. Let's see how you're getting on.
I've done half a dozen on a plate there.
Yeah,
they're all different sizes, but I don't think it really
that's
matters.
what's really good, isn't it? Yeah, that does. Yeah,
and I'm just working on number 7, and actually I'm going to send some to a friend of mine in Norwich and see whether perhaps that person can get them to grow in Norwich. But I think, you know, in the corner of a garden, even if it's not outside in a field, you know, they're great, aren't they?
In the corner of a garden. And if you send them, we sent some in post to people. One of the things is probably wrap them in a bit of bubble wrap.
Right.
Because that way, because as they travel, or in a padded envelope or something, because otherwise as they travel, if you're sending them through the post, it's quite nice. But yeah, they're a lovely gift to give to somebody. So I'm just going to make my final one.
Cool, you're quick.
When I say my final one, I'm going to say my final one for now, Becky, because that'll be my 7th one.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
But
I've done 7.
I've done my 7, and then I'll finish the others a little bit later on. But the principle is all there. Hopefully, everybody's been able to have a look at this. And if you think this is a really good idea, first of all, have a go at it. The self-drying clay is really quite easy to find. It's find online, and shops are opening now. In craft shops. So you can have a look for those. The instructions are on the Come and Facebook page, and you can download the instructions on how to do this. And also, if you've enjoyed it, you can share it with other people. And the easiest way to do that on Facebook is simply to click the share button. And that means that all of your friends have an opportunity to see how it is that you can go about making these. So final visit to Daisy and Poppy and see how you're getting on as you're continuing to work on these. Yeah, they're looking good. One more to go.
Final one.
Final one. Very impressive. Very impressive.
That was quick.
That's quick. Very impressive. Well, I look forward to seeing them. Great. Good to see you guys. See you soon. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Daisy, Poppy, Margaret, Amy. Bye. And Becky. Now we're going to come back, and we're going to be. I'm going to continue with mine. I think actually it's because I was talking that made me slower. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure that's the reason.
I don't know. I think you were pretty quick, actually. I think, you know, I think this is lovely.
I tell you what, I'm going to continue rolling whilst we talk about what we do next. What Becky? These can be shared. These can be planted. We'd love to see pictures of them if they've been finished. We'd love to see them as they grow. And if you share them, share this video, please do so. But Becky, what are we doing next time?
You know, I'm so engrossed in this. I've got to find my piece of paper that tells me what's happening next.
We're doing some, I know. Yeah, come on then.
We're going to do some cooking, and we're going to do it on May the 20th.
Yeah.
Which is a Thursday. We're still going to be online for now. And it occurred to me that now that we are able to see people a little bit more, especially in our gardens at the moment, it's quite nice to have some fresh cake. So I thought we'd make some scones.
Oh, brilliant. Or scones.
Yes, but when there's gone, there's got. When it's gone, it's gone. So
yeah, when there's indeed.
It doesn't matter what you call them, but that's what we're going to do anyway.
And that's on the 20th of May.
20th of May, yeah.
20th of May. Yeah. And then just so that you're aware, we are looking, when we're able to go back, we are beginning to think about whether we can meet together outside again, which would be it would be really lovely, wouldn't it? So we're maybe thinking about that in July, aren't we?
Yeah, I think by July we ought to be fairly confident of the weather. So we did think we might meet up outside, didn't we?
And do some games and
have some games and something to eat, because it's after school, so people are always hungry, aren't they?
Well, and even if it's not after school, I'm always hungry as well anyway, Becky. So that would be really good. We're going to have to let Ed know that we finished, because we could just continue rolling these and chatting for ages. But it's lovely to see you all. It's been really, really good. I hope you enjoy this. Do share your pictures, share it with other people. And we'll see you next time on May the 20th, when I'll be in the kitchen with a pinny on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. See you later, Becky.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.